My goodness, where do I even begin with RE Village on the PlayStation VR2? This was already a really great game that I thoroughly enjoyed when it launched almost 3 years ago now. It wasn't quite as good as Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which was insanely well made and also an intensely scary game, scared me pretty much senseless. But I think it's a solid entry into a franchise that really stumbled for years before that turning point. To quickly recap the story, Resident Evil Village is a continuation of the Ethan Winters saga, following the events of Resident Evil 7. We are once again thrown into the shoes of Ethan, again, as he is left stranded in a strange village with all kinds of mysteries at hand. Ethan's baby, Rose, has been taken, and he is out to get her back and escape yet another nightmare. Again. But, that's Resident Evil. Let's go. This sets up a showdown with some real nasty characters, some forgettable, and some that will be all time favorites for sure. Now, imagine you could take all of the horrific goodness in RE Village, the dreary, dark, and rundown houses and buildings, the ancient looking castles, the lichen who creep around in the shadows and then suddenly bum rush you, making cuts like a running back so they don't get shot, and now experience it all like you are really there. Ooh wee, is it intense? Try reloading your empty pistol with a fresh magazine from your pouch when you're surrounded by murderous creatures hell bent on putting you in the dirt, especially after you've been mauled a few times while fighting. It will make you appreciate VR and the experience it brings to the table. You truly have to experience it to understand how game changing it is. Since finishing RE Village, it has almost ruined traditional gaming for me now, as I can see angles for just about every game that make it a candidate for VR, especially first and third person shooters. If they can make this work in VR, then they can make just about anything follow suit. I often can't stop thinking about how they would play and the immersion that would come from it. Imagine all of the Sony exclusives that can potentially be created in VR now. Spider-Man, God of War, The Last of Us, Returnal, and all of the other titles that can be implemented. And I'm not talking about some half-baked idea where it's like a part of it. I mean a full game play of the main game in VR, just like with Village. I really think Sony nailed VR and has the first party IPs to differentiate itself from the market. With all of that said, how does VR actually change how you play the game? So, the VR experience you get out of this game is quite epic. Capcom really nailed it as they were able to make the game feel like it was built and designed from the beginning with VR in mind. It's absolutely nuts how well they managed to implement all of the mechanics from the base game into VR. Control is now directly in your hands, literally. You can play sitting or standing, and I played standing to get maximum ability, and it's also the way I recommend experiencing it. The moment you make your way down that snowy path through the mountains onto that cliff top and lay your eyes on nearly the entirety of the locations you'll venture to is jaw dropping. I spent a minute or two just taking it all in. You feel so tiny surrounded by mountains with a huge castle towering over you in the distance. It's just unreal how much it really makes you feel like you're there. You start the game with nothing but your nerves before you finally get your hands on your first weapon. Yes, you get a pistol, and yes, you do have to fight the first lichen you encounter with that pistol and a knife. And it is pretty heart pounding. In my case, I was so immersed in the moment, my initial instinct was to just grab my knife and go to town. I forgot all about having my sidearm. I really had to get up in there and slash him down while he is clawing and biting and ripping at me. When you're grabbed and he takes a chunk out of your neck for the first time, it's intense. And it feels like he's so close in your face, you can really see how ugly these things are. And I mean, these bastards are ugly as hell. There is a sense of depth that you have to experience to believe. And if you've never played a VR game before, then this is a huge system shock, as it feels like you really are there fighting for your life, not the character on the screen. Then the realization sets in that this was only one enemy by itself, and there are hundreds of enemies and also bosses that you'll have to face and defeat. After your short lived victory, you slowly cut the chain, unlock the gate leading into the next area, and get a look around at the abandoned village. You quickly realize you're setting off on a journey that is bleak and will definitely challenge your ability to perform while under pressure. You must react quickly and concisely That was my first impressions of a game that I literally beat 5 times with New Game Plus a couple years ago, and what an impression it was. That is how different it is tackling this Take a Village. It genuinely feels like a whole new game, and it's an absolute breath of fresh air. You will shoot, stab, swing, and punch your way to the finish line. You are responsible for reloading your weapons and switching to new ones when the situations call for it. No pressing square and getting the instant feedback of Ethan doing a mag change. You are on the hook for this, no matter the situation or odds stacked against you. There is a VR tutorial, which is where all the commands will be introduced and you can practice different motions. It is very well done, and I felt fully prepared to head into the campaign upon finishing it. If you are familiar with basic weapon handling and pistols and rifles, the game does a great job of mimicking the actual actions taken to load and unload each weapon. If you reload a pistol, for instance, when it still has a round in the chamber, you do not have to charge the pistol slide because it's already in battery and ready to fire. If you completely dump a mag down to 0, then load a magazine into the pistol, you will not have to charge the slide in order to load a round to the chamber. So then it will be ready to fire. It really is the attention to detail here that makes this game awesome and so cool to experience. So, in the heat of the moment, you may load a new mag into an empty gun, only to point it at an enemy, pull the trigger, and have nothing happen. It happened to me in the thick of it multiple times. You usually pay in blood in these moments, which is the cost of admission in VR. Going to the School of Hard Knocks. And I love this attention to detail. Each weapon has these traits according to what its real life counterpart requires. So any familiarity there actually helps you understand the mechanics in the game. I do think the reloading process is the most difficult thing to master, as you will be moving and trying to monitor enemies, as well as trying to look around, look at your weapon workspace, and reload. When you are doing multiple things at once, it can be tricky because all of those inputs require different hand gestures, pushes of buttons, and joystick motions simultaneously. Aiming is pretty straightforward as you just line up your sights and fire. There is recoil, so rapid fire will cause your aim to be off, although you can usually upgrade most weapons via the Duke's gunsmithing to negate this. Speaking of the Duke, he is the NPC that you will trade with. You can buy and sell items for lei, the game's currency. You can also purchase new weapons and attachments, as well as utilize a gunsmithing option to increase ammo capacity, firepower, and reduce recoil. You physically have to hold up your arms to block incoming attacks, or you will take the full damage of every blow. It's pretty intuitive when a creature is barreling at you between reloads, or if you can't take down all of the enemies in a pack before one makes it to you. Item management is done very well, as you wear a battle belt with holsters and pouches attached to store weapons and ammo. You can also access items by opening either side of your jacket to access even more gear. You are allowed to hold up to 2 pieces of gear inside each flap, and you're also able to fully customize where you place all your gear in the player menu. So, you don't have to settle for where the default placements are. Taking on the bosses in this game is awesome. Every boss feels epic, and you experience the fight in a whole new light in VR. They each pose different challenges in VR and require you to focus on different elements of the experience. For instance, some may require pinpoint accuracy, while others may need to focus more on defense like dodging or running for cover. One con I did experience is the left arm of my character at times would disappear. The controller itself would still function, but without the arm on screen, I could not reload my weapon. It is a major bummer, and it never happened on any boss encounters. It was almost always in between moving from one section of the game to the other. Also, I'm not sure if it's the lighting in my play area because it tends to happen more during the day with my blinds drawn slightly open than at night when I have a fixture above my play area on. Either way, it is game breaking if you need a reload on a boss or group of enemies because there's no other way to do it. You can go in the options menu and fiddle around with like the reload actions and set it to a button. But what's the point of that if the whole focus of the game is VR? There is also occasional pop-in based on where you're looking, and I've only noticed it when I'm outside in a large area and change where I'm looking at suddenly. For instance, trees may suddenly have a branch pop in more foliage or just pop in more branches altogether. It is subtle, and I believe it's actually based off how the PSVR tracks your eyes to give you sharper images exactly where you're looking at. So at the end of the day, this game is a must play in my opinion, and it's currently the best VR game on the PSVR2. The replayability is off the charts with New Game Plus and other secrets to discover. You can easily sink hours and hours into this game without breaking a sweat. I'm thoroughly impressed and can't wait to play Resident Evil 4 Remake in VR when it launches here shortly later this year. I recommend this game to anyone who likes first person shooters or the horror genre, as it delivers nothing but quality in both aspects. If you have a PSVR2, buy this game. If you bought a PSVR2 and you have Village and haven't gave it a shot yet because you're playing other things, play it again. It is awesome. And it really is that excellent. So those are my thoughts on the game, and I appreciate you hanging out with me for a bit. Thanks for the support, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.